And here we are, we're back. So it is now time to do the commentary tracks for the Thunderfrog.
Yes.
So this is a book that Alex and I have been working on for a while together. He's helped me a lot with it. I actually just checked recently, and it turns out I started the book in 2011. Though it definitely feels like a lot further back than that.
Yeah, and I re-met up with you 2012
Yeah,
at Comic-Con. And
Emerald City Comic Con, actually.
Yes.
Thanks to a bloody nose, apparently.
Yeah.
That's actually an interesting story, because I had been trying to find Alex about the time that I started this thing, because we had...
And the universe definitely needed to make the right sequence of events to happen.
Back in the day, we had wanted to create a comic book series together, and it just, life conspired against us, I think.
Right.
But I remember just looking to my right, and there he was, holding a bloody nose. So the Thunderfrog is basically a comic book series I created when I started with Thunderfrog Studios.
With Harrison Wood.
Harrison Wood, yes. A comic book company I worked with for a few years. And
so it stemmed from the actual mascot of the character.
Yeah. So
and the name of the company.
Yeah, so if you're watching these videos, most likely you have a copy of the graphic novel. If not, thank you for finding them, and go buy the graphic novel on our store. But if you flip the book over, look at the cover, there's a little circular mascot of a frog holding up a hammer. And that was essentially where it all started. I took it seemed like you should be able to take this character and make a comic book for the company, And
now, Thunderfrog, for the individuals that don't know, actually came way before 2011.
Oh.
The initial company itself, Thunderfrog Studios.
Thunderfrog Studios had been around about 10 years before, right? Which was an early indie company in Seattle. I don't know a lot about the details about that.
From at least what I recall from talking to Harrison Wood was... it was a name that was kind of a placeholder that everybody agreed on.
Well, it was the one name that nobody could disagree with.
Right.
Yeah.
But I do have to say, it's like, I love the story about how that you wanted to help within branding, within the several titles that Thunderfrog Studio had. Mm-hmm. It had Anunnaki,
Countermay, which we're finally actually making that book now.
Right.
Yeah. Cat and Dog, which has recently been continued by Harrison. Yeah, and there were a few others. I mean,
3 times and
3 times,
which is more recent. But
yeah, it's more recent. Yeah, it's one of those things where I think the company was a lot of people had ideas. They wanted to make something, wanted to make their big splash, but it just. I don't know, maybe there's no follow-through, or people had life get in the way. I know Harrison had a daughter, and that changed his priorities quite a bit. And so, and his priorities changed again, which is where we relaunched the company. Right. But getting back to this series, so we have a copy of the book over here off the side that we're going to kind of scroll through as we go through. But Thunderfrog #1 kind of grew out of an argument that I had with Harrison. Because, we'd had this ongoing discussion about how much dialogue should be in comics, and so and I had tried to produce a comic book that was more visual, and then I was like, no, people's like, no, you have to put dialogue there.
Well, and that really comes interesting for anyone that's watching this, since you're a writer,
yes,
and yet Harrison is an artist,
right? And
it's kind of that level of,
I know,
you'd almost kind of think the
flip.
Opposite, but
yeah.
But I also do get that of there are times where well, it really comes down to me, it's like the core story.
Yes.
So if there's a great core story and it can be done with visuals, or if it can be done with dialogue, that helps.
There is a theory in comic books that you should show, not tell so much. And I don't think there's any right answer there. I think it's just what tells the story the best.
And yeah. I mean, at least based off of my understandings of my interactions with Harrison, is he's got that classic Marvel DC where it is, that level of explaining of my origin story comes from this, and this is the reasons why I'm doing this. And,
yes.
That's not bad, but, it is a different kind of...
Yes, well, particularly in his older comic books, you saw more of that. And his more recent stuff, I think, maybe a bit influenced with me there, trying to be more unconventional in the storytelling. But in this particular case, one of the things that I wanted to do was because when I had read comic books, I was really disappointed with like how basic some of the combat scenes where it's like, oh, we're gonna shoot here off to the side doing cool stuff, and you don't see what they're shooting at, and you got, okay, and Wolverine's got a thing of him, cutting ninjas up, but like you don't always have this logical sequential choreographed fight scene. And with Thunderfrog, and also with partially with Thunderfrog, more with my recent book Cyber Symbiosis, but like I wanted to invest a bit more in the fight sequences and the action scenes and create more of a continuity visually in the story. And so with Thunderfrog, scrolling down, like it opens up with the battle, and you have this sequence of the fight. Like there is a little bit of like montaginess to it, but there is definitely a lot of sequential activity in the fight. Like you do feel like it goes from point to point, and it isn't just a fight montage. It's like there's a sequence to everything, and it has a continuity. And one of the things about this is like I had actually written the first issue to communicate almost entirely with the visual language. There's very little dialogue. I think maybe 6 total lines of dialogue in the whole part of the story, and they're all very basic. And it's just like it's actually interesting because I didn't intentionally set out to create an all ages book. I was looking for the actual point was it was kind of an experiment. It's like, can we create something? Because I was so fascinated with Invader Zim at the time, and the longevity of the comic book and the characters, particularly Gur, over a decade after the show had been, decades even after the show had been off the air, and it's still going strong as a brand. And because
between all the fans' support with going on to various sites and doing fan art, and just the fact of the intellectual property being comic books, the upcoming movie, at least when we're filming
and who knows if they'll actually make it, but because okay, so our friend Jeff, his little girl Cassandra was running around in a Gur hoodie, and shirts and clothes, and she never even seen the show, and she just saw the stuff their big sister was wearing. It's like, oh, I like this, and that's, oh, sorry, Luke, we'll have to get back to you later, buddy. So, anyways, and so what I was trying to do was create something that had a really cool visual feel that maybe we could get like a cartoon deal out of, and I was trying to create something that might have that kind of longevity, and a character that had that kind of appeal in the Thunderfrog. And so you can see, I think our artist has really knocked it out of the park with this character. In fact, last night my girlfriend told me that she wants to get a tattoo of the Thunderfrog and and the Ranger character Helene, together as best friends.
Oh, that is awesome.
So that Tayson's gonna flip when he finds out. Tayson being the artist, Tayson Martindale. So the first issue, Alex had helped a little bit with it, as we discovered when we were going back through some of the concept art, but like for the most part, you weren't really hugely involved. This is one is mostly me and Tayson working on this together. The main part, actually, like you talked about, here's the picture right here. So, or at least the early version of it. So we have this sequence where in the book, this one character gets killed, and he drops this hammer he's carrying. Theo, the Thunderfrog, leaps out of nowhere, goes with a mallet and attempts to nail this monster, this mastodon barbarian. Seems to take him down, and the guy's like, "Oh, it's on." He gets up and he's about ready to crush our main character, and then the Ranger character Helene basically nails the mastodon in the eye with an arrow, which causes it to reel back, and then at that point, he's got some breathing room. And so it's like, what am I going to do? He just grabs the first thing he can find, which is the hammer that the knight dropped, swings it, throws it, or basically swings it into the guts, like the chest of this mastodon, this basically Chewbacca on steroids, and
activates a power that hasn't been able to be utilized for multiple generations.
The dormant power of the hammer, and it shoots a lightning bolt straight through the monster. And it was an interesting sequence because when I was going back through because we had had a hard drive crash about 2 years ago, and I lost so much stuff. And then because we were doing this, I had to go back through some old emails looking for some critical files that we had to have
Right.
for the graphic novel, because it turns out I didn't find out until a week ago that the epilogue was also lost. That's my fault. Anyways, but then I found the original pencils for this page, and it's interesting looking at it because like the first one looked really good, but because of and you'll see this here in the book, because of the angle, it wasn't very clear that lightning bolt went right through it. It obviously smart people can tell, but it wasn't visually distinct, and it wasn't what I was hoping for. And also, like the look,
and also it's like looking at it now, matching up wise with the way that the hammer comes on up, and on the backside actually doesn't match up.
And that was another point I had made at the time with Tayson,
Right.
is that there was a discontinuity in the angles, and it's like
But I think that just goes into like how much he's grown as an artist.
Yeah, and I also think that the tusks were not big enough on the mastodon in this particular image. Now on the next page, it shows his second one, and it's very close to what we wanted, but again, and of course it turned, as I was reminded, he actually had missed and not put the arrow in the eye of the mastodon in the first one. So it's much better. It's got the arrow is in the eye. It's almost at the right angle, but now he's basically taken and turned Theo around completely. And what was beautiful about the first one was the expression on Theo's face. And it's great because like part of what sold me on Tayson was his ability to emote and express characters and to inject life and personality into these things, where it's like they stop being just characters on a page and start being people. And that's what you need, and not many artists can capture that. He's certainly not Marvel. Like he doesn't have the mainstream Marvel or DC style, and that's not the kind of artist he is. But he captures facial expression it's so superior.
Right.
There's no, he's a master on the planet as far as I'm concerned. He is unparalleled in his. I'm sure you agree.
Yeah.
On that regard. But so this is the part where you had to get involved because we were having a tough time communicating. Okay, we can't just do 10 different versions of this picture because he's a collaborator at this point. He's basically at this point we had the rare deal where he was basically a partial owner of the project rather than getting paid. And so you want to comment on your aspect of it? We don't like the sketch that you did has been lost, unfortunately.
Right, a mixture of either like the fact of time has gone by, or between like hardware crashes and
it's been almost 10 years,
right?
So,
but as I recall, like because of the amount that myself and Woody talk on a semi-regular basis, because between how close we live to each other and the fact of how much of these projects we work together with, not like an irritation level from you, but kind of a almost irritation level of, like Tayson's not getting it.
Yeah.
Could you do something to basically get something? And I do this very quick, very rough kind of like what eventually became what Tayson did, of the hunched over and the way that...
Right, and you'll see that, and if you go to chapter 1, you'll definitely see that page. It's kind of what we call the money shot of the book.
Right.
The big difference here is like you're making a book, and if you are somebody that wants to create comic books, the reality is you will probably never have the luxury of having a person right there with you to work with. I mean, you may get that fortunate, but the thing is like you have to find your talent where you can get it. And the guy that I found was in Edmonton, Canada, and we've never met in person.
Well, that definitely says something about within our 21st century world, is like how we've had the opportunity between Thunderfrog Studios and Miniature Dragons to go in and find individuals from across the planet.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the capability of technology. But, it is great where it's like, hey, here's this person, guy, gal, that just lives within such a close distance.
Yeah.
Like Ben Hansen is a great example.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he lives up in
Whidbey Island area.
Whidbey Island, and
way to the north. Which,
yeah, and Eric lives very close to
yeah.
that.
And contrary to what Hollywood will tell you, you cannot hop in a car and drive to Whidbey Island. You have to take a ferry. You know, it's actually kind of funny bringing that point up because, like, you know, I'm kind of a rarity because, like, you go to cons, right? And you see a guy at a table with a really cool indie book. Most of them, I'm sorry, guys, most of them are garbage. But, like...
and as Doc would say, that's your opinion.
Anyways, well, that's the thing is like there are a lot of amateur efforts out there, right? I'm excited about my first book. It's not very good. Quite frankly, my first book was not very good either. But, you know, the thing is there's a question of staying power, right? And so are you going to stay with it long enough to get good? And are you going to study and take time to learn? And one of the things that you run into is that very rarely do people take the time to really learn all the skills because you're trying to be a one-man operation doing everything, which means you have to know everything. And like there are things like people usually have trouble with their panel arrangements. They don't learn how to do panels right, or they undervalue lettering.
No, you know? And there's something to be said about that in two folds. One of doing projects and doing various activities, you know, besides the practice makes insanity, is the fact of like doing projects, doing things, do fan art, do your own characters, your own IP, whatever really does help because it's those levels of building up your skills. But within that also being said, there is a part of like shifting part of the work to other individuals. Either the fact of like, I will give you physical cash, I will give you Mickey D's, I will give you this action figure, I will give you some sort of like equivalent exchange. And the general fact is like, you know, yes, there are some people that are amazing on being able to utilize multiple resources of different hat wearing of like these different skills, but at the same time, a lot of those individuals
themselves like do everything themselves.
Oh yeah, and you know it's very doable, and there is a lot of individuals that you know work on projects where they are the full curator, but at the same time, most of those individuals I've noticed take the difference of when there's a team versus a single individual, the team can generally get out more units.
I certainly can't do everything, you know.
Well, it's you could, but I mean, it's like, you know,
really
it's
hard.
I mean, it's very doable, but at the same time, it's like building up your skill levels in this kind of Lego pieces, so to speak. Well, you get your writing up to a certain level, you get your panel arrangement into a certain level of capability. Maybe the art is at a lower level, but you build it up over time and effort.
The point I was making, of course, is that, you know, you're saying the ideal scene, right? And the majority of comic book creators that are at our, you know, the amateur level don't do that. And there's a lot of very poor execution because you're in a field where there is a right way to do it, and it has developed exact technology. And if you're going to do this, you should do it. And most of the new people, because like you go to cons, you see all these people, right? And then next year you see a different group of people,
right?
And there's like maybe a dozen that come back, and we're one of those people that come back. And
it's always kind of one of those things of like, it is disheartening to see, like, you know, those individuals that you meet at these shows, especially since, like, myself and Woody go to conventions to basically promote our various stuff besides YouTube and other social media.
Sure.
But at the same time, it's like, it's great to see some of our future colleagues. I mean, like, a great example was, once again, bringing up Ben Hansen. You know, I met him at several cons ago, I think Spokane, and after just chit-chatting with him, getting acquainted with him, when Woody said, hey, we need a new artist for Countermay, I said, this is our guy.
Yeah, well, the old guy had passed, you know. But anyways, kind of getting back to where I was trying to go with that is like, one of the things that happens to me, which every once, because like I've got staying power, like I haven't given up and I've continued on. Every once in a while, I get somebody that tracks me down from somewhere else on the planet. Kind of getting back to what you're saying about like the connectivity. It's like they want to pick my brain, so to speak, about like how do I do it. And like the last time that happened, some kid in Africa
Oh, really?
got a hold of me and was like talking to me extensively about different things. And
Oh, that's really neat.
yeah, and I gave him which some advice about how to proceed, and I think some very constructive advice. Like how to like manage his brand, and it's like because sometimes you have to keep a separation between your personal life and the business, and it's like, how to like in this particular case, the guy was very religious, and I've come to the realization that one should probably like there's a certain degree of like I was once told that you want to get along with people, you don't discuss money, religion, or politics. And his Facebook page was nothing but exaltation of God, and that's fine. That's totally fine. But that might not be the best message if you're trying to build a comic book brand, unless that's your target audience. And if that is, that's fine. But I think that perhaps you might want to consider, because you have to build a brand out of yourself to a degree.
But to touch bases on that, I think it's kind of an interesting point of thinking about your intention of bringing up a brand is not necessarily the target audience that you get. And I say this in two parts. One, for Thunderfrog itself, your mention about like having it not necessarily in all ages, because there is character death and there's parts where characters guts blow out.
Well, I was thinking, we're going to talk about that in a second. I was thinking about that last night, and we are as much all ages as Star Wars is. Like,
yeah, fair enough.
I think that if
limbs get cut off and people have died. So
I think as a parent, if you're okay letting your kid watch Star Wars, this book is kind of in the same category.
But that goes into like make your own decisions.
Parents should make those. Yeah, parents should not just hand a book to their kids. They should see what the kid's getting.
Oh
first.
Yeah, and yeah. But it's like
Star Wars. Yeah.
My general feel, it's like really I see part of Thunderfrog as kind of a very teenage kind of book. In some aspects of like what goes on within it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, going to these conventions, we see probably the majority of the individuals that pick up this book are kids or the parents that go like.
Well, strategically, it has because of how we approach going to cons. There is a value in having a kid's book, and this is not meant to be a kid's book, but kids love it. And I don't even know if I want to call it an all-ages book. I think it has the same appeal as Toy Story, where there's something for adults and there's something for kids. I would never be so arrogant as to compare myself necessarily to something so beloved, but it is kind of in the same vein.
That spirit of like,
yeah, because as a child, if you enjoy this book and then you read it again as a teenager and then you read it as an adult, you're probably going to get a different experience every time. And that's the same thing as like a lot of Pixar films are like that. And because I don't think any child ever knows how many people died in The Incredibles.
Yeah.
And then you notice there wasn't a single death in The Incredibles 2.
Right. Except for stuff that happened in the past.
Yeah,
that's beside the point.
Squeaked that one under the radar. But so it's, but like strategically speaking, you're out there, you're hawking your stuff. You're basically being a big huckster, and you're promoting your materials. And you look at the flow of traffic in front of your booth, and there is a lot of adults, but there's also an equal number of kids or families, right? And so if you can approach something for the child, you double your opportunity to make a sale.
But even with that being said, I think like one of the core things that goes in for individuals that are listening to this, we're not telling you basically to do a book that is all ages or just for kids, just because you want to get that sell. It's the fact of like what was mentioned before. We have return individuals that come to us at various conventions and buy the next installment because they enjoy the story.
Yes.
And that's the biggest thing is like, yeah, if we just sold number one and then we didn't have return customers,
Mm-hmm.
then it's kind of like, oh, okay, neat. We
Mm.
we were able to do that. Just quick, shady kind of.
Well,
I got some comics,
well,
and
there is another aspect too. How many people say, "Hey, what else do you have?"
yeah,
And and then you have something. So before we wrap up this particular commentary, I did want to get back to a point that we kind of got off topic of, which we are known to do. So getting back to the point of like we're working on this page that that you helped me with. Ooh, computer, wake up. So the thing is let's say you are making a book and you have to get your talent where you can find it, and the reliable quality people aren't necessarily going to be the guy next door. Most likely it won't be. In fact, I couldn't even tell you how many people, I'm sure you know this, like complain that the guy that their friend that they want to get on the book won't do it.
right, right.
But like the thing is we found the quality, talented person who is in, like he's reliable, and God, I wish I could get him on every book. But like he only has the script to work from. You've never met this person. You may never meet the person face to face, and then you have this script that he has to read the script and interpret what you want. Unless you can get a Skype call in potentially, which we've never done, something like Alex is very valuable because I can stand there and I was able to basically hunch and do the body language that I was looking for. And Alex just goes, I get it. And then we sent that to Tayson and boom, and so that's one of the things that you were probably the most valuable
Right.
at certain stages of the project.
Right, just basically being able to say, like, this is stuff where within verbal communication and written communication,
Yeah.
there is that part of lost in translation.
Yeah.
But there are visuals, even if you just do something, just a quick doodle
Yeah.
that can really just help get part of the point across.
But something else too that I think cannot be undervalued is that you also bear in mind that this project is a collaboration, right? Because it's kind of like making a movie. You have what you write, you have what you film, then you have what you edit. And in this particular case, what you have is a situation where you have me. I had an idea. I have a clear vision of what I want. Then I have to hand the script off to the artist who reads it, and he has a different interpretation. Now, there are points when there are certain landmarks that this has to be this way because it's important to the story and it's part of the continuity and setting up events, and like there's certain details have to be there. But there are other details that don't matter. But then sometimes your artist comes in and he sees it in a certain way and he presents it in a certain way. And
which sometimes helps within the flow, or sometimes
it meets in the middle, right?
Yeah.
And suddenly you have something that takes on a whole life of its own. Like one key example of this is the Squire character, Martis Tenney, who was the other Badger character in the book. He was the Squire of the knight who died, and it turned out that I had originally envisioned him as a villain. I didn't really envision him as sticking with the story. He was supposed to die in the third graphic novel. Spoilers. And Tayson comes in and he is absolutely like enthralled with this character. It's his favorite character, and it shows. Like he injects so much personality into the character. And first off, Tayson I don't think was ever told when the character was going to die, but it's like, oh my god, okay, so the guy that wants to do this and he's willing to do it for free, I'm about to kill off his favorite character. God damn it. That's not going to work, right? So then you kind of have to look at it from that point, like, well, do I make a change or do I stick to my guns? But then I thought about it. What's planned for the character? What's going to happen with that character? If he survives, you have a much more interesting dramatic arc for this character, and so you have the scenario where, okay, well, again, the story evolves and changes and meets in the middle. And it's kind of like Star Wars changed a lot because of the things that happened behind the scenes, with like the toy business suddenly impacting the movies, and you got to, which I don't think hurt it because you got to see lots more cool things on screen. And Han Solo continued on into Return of the Jedi, which I can see why they would have wanted to kill him off, but at the same time, it was great that he was there, and like there are other productions where like Duralius and Associates, the guys that make that animated series, have commented that the feedback from fans influenced the show. Like they brought in characters back. They brought back characters that were popular because they want people to like the show, right? And it's kind of like this. It's like you have this collaborative effort, and there are times when the collaborators bring something new to the project, and they do make it better. You end up, like I've had so many times in my books where somebody came up with a suggestion or an idea, like the artist thought of something, and it had never occurred to me to go in that direction. And suddenly you have this new thing that you can explore with the story that,
right,
it's like, wow, look at that.
Right, and that gets into a thing of bringing up from earlier of that benefit of having, that fine level between having too many chefs to spoil the pot, but just having one individual that, just adds this simple ingredients and makes...
Right, and that's actually a really key point, because somebody has to be in charge to make the final decision.
Right.
But that person cannot be so proud and hung up on the rightness of their vision that they will not accept other useful interpretations. You may still have to stick with your vision, but you are hiring this artist to bring something to the project, not to do what he's told necessarily.
No, and I totally get that, and I want to say it's like one of the things that I generally do is is I'll go in and basically, if I have something where I'm arguing of like, okay, this is something that I feel solid on, I'll make my point.
Yeah.
But if it's something where it's like, I don't feel like it's strong enough where I have to really hammer it in, I'll back off.
Yeah. And there's actually, it kind of gets to another interesting point, because like, if you take a look at the shot where the mastodon is killed, right? Look really close, there are guts flying out the back end of that creature, and I had specifically told him not to do that. In all three versions, they're there. And then there's another part that's been mildly controversial, where later on one of the pages, the armadillo character, Haran, she snaps a dude's neck, and the snap is actually a sound effect. And do you let that, like, kids are buying this book, do you let that stand, or do you remove the snap? And we ended up leaving it in. And the part with the guts flying out, I handled that by simply covering up with the sound effect, where it's not very obvious. And now that I brought it up, you probably go, wow, why didn't I see that? And so it's just one of those fun little details that Tayson is trying to bring some maturity to the project, which looks cartoony. And I didn't want to have something that was so brutally violent, but at the same time, it's like, this is a war story. Like in Star Wars, well, look at Star Wars. How many people were killed in the Star Wars movies? A lot.
Right.
And it would actually blew me away is the Clone Wars cartoon series, which was made for kids.
Right.
How many clone troopers get killed all the time? And it's very brutal and very harsh. And I think about, like, I used to watch, I don't know if you ever saw these shows, Alex, I think you didn't, but like I used to watch Star Blazers, which came on at 7 in the morning, right after the 700 Club, and on Channel 11 here locally, before a lot of the local channels were network affiliates, because it used to just be the big three: ABC, CBS, and NBC, and then you had Robotech, which came on a few years later, and in these series, which were brought over from Japan, in a mostly unaltered state, you had situations, particularly in the Macross portion of the Robotech story, a lot of people died. There were people getting killed. They talked about it. It was very clear and obvious. I guess in Star Blazers they'd attempted to state that the enemy soldiers were robots, and that's why it's okay to kill them. But I missed that completely. I only know about that from something I read. Like I never got that. I thought they were people. But it's like, I remember, like, there's a scene they had a major battle in Star Blazers, and afterwards they have the scene where they're out on the deck of the ship in spacesuits doing a funeral in space. Good time to attack. And they had all these pods, and they were just sending them off in a funeral in space. And it was just, looking at that, it's like, you cannot miss that symbolism as a kid. Like, you get it. And it's probably why the Death from Optimus Prime didn't hit me that hard, because I'd already basically popped that cherry on Roy Fokker from Rotec. um, but it's like, okay, well, the character died. And it didn't emotionally scar me. I think that there's a certain value in treating your children like they're intelligent people, because yeah, there are kids and they're interested in things that kids do and they're full of energy and whatever. Maybe they're annoying, but you want these kids to grow up and you want to educate them and you want them to get used to life, and you're not doing them any favors by hiding life from them. And I think that giving children things to read that are intelligently written, well thought out, and reveal these things about life, the realities of life, like characters die and not everything, the hero doesn't always win, and it certainly, they have rough times. Anyways, like all these things, like these are not bad for children to get these messages. And as a parent, it's your responsibility to look at this book you're now holding, hopefully, and decide, is this appropriate for my child? It's my job to sell it to you. It's your job to decide whether or not the kid should be reading it. But I don't believe that anything in this book is scarring or jarring or inappropriate. It's just a question of what you think is appropriate for your kid at what age. But I think if your kid can handle Star Wars, this is good. It's kind of funny. I remember watching Deadpool, and we were going, "Oh, it's R-rated. Don't take kids to see it." And I'm like, I'm watching the thing. It's literally cartoon violence. I mean, like, okay, so the nude scenes, I get that, but it's like I was sitting there waiting for the violence. Like, I mean, it's like RoboCop was worse than this.
Yeah.
That is okay. Anyways, geez, is there anything else we need to go over in this issue?
Let's see. So, within our ramblings,
sure.
So, another aspect that I worked on was, as for covers, I was the colorist.
Oh, yeah. So let's talk about the cover a little bit. Now, this is actually not the first version of it.
Yes.
We had another version that another guy did, which,
just didn't work out.
I think that's fair. It just didn't work out. And it wasn't quite right. Okay, so like, we've changed it for the graphic novel. The original title had the word Thunderfrog, but the T was replaced with the hammer. And it was interesting because I had got that idea because I'd seen it many times before, and in another web series, which you should totally check out, called Transsolar Galactica, they had done that with the symbol for their ship. The shape of the ship became the T, and I thought it was brilliant. I wanted to do the same thing or something similar, right. And it didn't work because like people, I thought it was obvious. People would look at it and they couldn't tell. People thought, what is Thunderfrog? And it's like, I don't know. It seemed obvious. I guess it wasn't. So we're not going to do that anymore. But one thing that I was inspired to do was I loved how they did the logo for Final Fantasy, where this symbol of a character or something from the game would be incorporated into the logo. So I wanted to do something similar where you'll see a group of all the main characters, all 5 of them, all in black, as if they're coming out of the logo. And I thought that was a cool scene. And Alex came in and basically recolored it, and I would like to have had a little bit more flash to this because I was hoping for something similar to He-Man, kind of like the. But we also had the farm beat in the background,
right?
And do you have anything to add about this experience? Because this is literally like one of the first professional things you ever colored,
right,
in comics.
So definitely there was some stuff where I can see it's quite a learning curve in comparison. But one of the things that I definitely have to say as doing coloring of other people's art is you've got to get an understanding of what the property is, what you're doing. So when I've colored stuff for Thunderfrog, it's in a different kind of mindset than, say, when I was coloring Anunnaki for Thunderfrog Studio.
Yeah.
Or other various properties, commissions, and whatnot that I've done. It's just a fact of, okay, does this work well? Does this go within the world? Does this, make sure that the character is the most enhanced that it needs to be?
Well, there's another aspect also, by the way, that you had a little trouble with it initially, and eventually, we got over that. But like the first issue played really well when you printed it, because like it looks a little darker on the screen because the colors are a little stronger. But when it came in print, like everything popped really well, because one of the things you can do is you can put a white outline around the text, and that helps it pop out. But you had a lot of really dark colors at the top, right? And so some of the characters kind of vanished a little bit. But on the second issue, which we can probably just talk about that now and not have to worry about it later, it completely somehow the color combination completely obscured the logo, and we had to do a little bit of a fade to white at the top to make it visible. And that's one of the things that you definitely have to think about, is like, are the color choices compatible with, because inherently this might not have been a good compatible because it got a little bit too dark, and we tried it and it actually worked, so great. It actually ended up being no problem at all. And it's funny because issue 2, not nearly as dark, somehow didn't work.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things that you have to...
sometimes that's that problem of...
consider.
Consider, and also within RGB and CMYK, you've got some problems of like how the spectrum of colors actually work.
Yeah, and you also have a tendency to default to primary colors, possibly too much, and so that's one of those things also. It's like, the natural shading, like, there's a lot of shading that you can take advantage of, in some of these, and anyways, and if you're hearing any funny noises in the background, it's the kitties causing trouble again. So overall though, I think this is a fantastic cover, way better than the original one, because it was a lot closer to what I wanted, and because we were really going for like a He-Man thing. The only thing I might change, I think we probably should have edited the hammer, because like Tayson's a bit rough in what he does. Like, it all looks good, but it's like, it's like just kid can't do a straight line to save his life, and but he's not the only one. There's a lot of artists that supposedly good draftsmen are not, but like we probably should have like fixed the hammer just a little bit, but we're probably not printing the first issue anymore. It's like we're in the graphic novel phase of the company. So shoot,
we probably should get to endpoint.
Yeah, I think so.
So any other details, or otherwise we should...
Well, I think it's one fun thing to mention, is that which I think we had mentioned in the first version of this that we recorded before the files got corrupted. Jesus Christ, cat. There are a lot of interesting little details that we had put in the background that you might never notice, like, and a lot of people don't catch this, but like if you look really close on like
in the farm itself,
in the farm 2, on page 2, you'll notice that the main character is raising land lobsters, which which is fun. Because this planet that the story takes place on is not Earth. But yet it has animals that are familiar, and there's actually like a reason why everything is the way it is. There's a mythology to it, and it goes, but like I wanted the idea that it's not our ecosystem, that there are other things, other strange things living there. So anyways, we'll go into more detail on that later. So I guess this is it. We'll see you in the next one. So if you enjoyed this, there are a series. You're looking at a page full of QR codes, which stands for Quick Response, if you were wondering, and you can scan those and you can read basically all of our other content, and or actually see, like, because we're doing a whole enhanced book with extensive commentary tracks and information for anybody that wants to really get in the nitty-gritty about how this this process came about. And you'll probably get a lot of comments and advice if you want to get into the making of comic books, and we'll probably be peppering that throughout the whole project too. So I guess we'll see you guys in the next video.
Bye.